Hello. Today I'm going to talk about Hohmann transfers and their primary application, the Coplanar Rendezvous. Firstly, let's take a look at the Saturn V rocket, which carried 3 brave astronauts to perform these maneuvers in orbit around the Moon. The Saturn V is a true behemoth, both in terms of size and power. Its first stage carried it over the first 42 miles towards space, producing over 7,600,000 pounds of thrust at launch. The second stage carried it the next 75 miles up into space, and almost up to orbital speed, at its required altitude of about 108 miles. The S-4B, the third stage, carried Apollo into orbit and then onwards towards the Moon, after performing a translunar injection burn. On return from the lunar surface, the lander then performed a coplanar rendezvous to return to the command module, after exploring the surface of our celestial neighbour. However, before this could be taken to the Moon, it had to be mastered in orbit around the Earth. This was one of the goals of NASA's Project Gemini. Here we can see an animation of a spacecraft in orbit. Now let's say the astronauts wanted to move to a higher orbit. To do this, they will have to perform what is known as a Hohmann transfer, which consists of 2 burns. A change in orbital altitude requires a change in orbital speed. In performing a manoeuvre, this is known as delta velocity. Orbital speed is calculated using the Vis-Viva equation. As we know, a Hohmann transfer consists of 2 burns, so this equation can be manipulated to yield the following 2. Where μ is the standard gravitational parameter of the primary body, in our case Earth, r1 is the radius of the initial orbit, and r2 is the radius of the desired orbit. For our purposes, there are 2 important points in an elliptical orbit, the apoapsis and periapsis. These are the highest and lowest parts of the orbit respectively. The delta velocity calculated in the equation for the first burn results in the apoapsis of the transfer orbit resting at the altitude of the desired orbit. The second burn will then be performed at the apoapsis of the transfer orbit, and will transform it from an ellipse to a circle to constant altitude as desired. So now let's suppose you wish to meet up with another spacecraft in a different orbit. To do this, you must perform a Hohmann transfer. However, to rendezvous with your target, the transfer must be perfectly timed, so both spacecraft enter the same orbit at the same time, at the same speed. This introduces the concept of phase angles. Note that for this maneuver to be performed successfully, both orbits must exist within the same plane, will be coplanar. The phase angle is the angle between the intercepting spacecraft and its target. The phase angle must be a specific value for the rendezvous to occur. This value is given by combining these 4 equations. This introduces a new term, the semi-major axis. This is calculated by the following equation, where Ra is the radius of the apoapsis and Rp is the radius of the periapsis. Once sufficient time has passed such that the phase angle has been satisfied, the first burn of the Hohmann transfer is executed. Note that the closest approach between the target and the interceptor lies at the apoapsis of the transfer orbit. This means that, if the circularization burn does not occur, the 2 spacecraft will rendezvous with great relative speed.